Hello, world. Thank you for tuning in to yet another episode of My Matters with Kay. Today, I have another special guest by the name of Mr. Naj. What's up, Naj? How you doing today?
Hey Kay, what's happening? What's up, y'all? What's up, viewers? How are y'all?
Hopefully, everyone's doing well. Your day was good. How was your day?
It was good. A little long, but I lived.
I hear that. That's what matters, right?
Absolutely, I'm
So,
good.
I, I know that's right. So today's episode is based off of substance abuse and addiction. And you and I have had talks outside of the studio. And I understand that you have a story, a very intriguing yet sad story. It's a
Right,
story that a lot of people deal with, a lot of people don't talk about. So I really believed, we both believed that having this dialogue would be beneficial to, even if it's one person.
for
Um,
sure.
we're doing our due diligence. So I understand that, your father and your brother both passed away.
Right, two people that were near and dear to my heart battled addiction for most of their adult lives, and unfortunately, they weren't able to exercise those demons, so to speak, and they're no longer here with us physically.
Right. How long have they been gone? How long?
So my father, he passed away in the summer of 1997. So that's been about, what is that, 26 years, give or take. And my brother died on April 15th, 2018.
Okay.
Yesterday was yesterday. No, excuse me. I'm sorry. September 18th would have been his 50th birthday that just passed.
Oh, well,
So
happy
it was a little tough for me.
Yeah, yeah. I can imagine. I think that there is a negative stigmatization affiliated with substance abuse, right?
For
Um,
sure.
and people don't realize that just because someone is addicted to drugs, opioids, doesn't mean that they're just crackheads, for lack of a better term.
Right.
Sometimes people get in car accidents, sometimes people have work accidents. There's a plethora of things that can occur to that can occur, and as a result of that, be put on medication, right?
Right.
So I understand that your father was in Vietnam, right? Or was
Right.
it? It was
Yes.
Vietnam.
Yeah. My dad was in Vietnam, and I think he was like maybe 19 years old when he went to Vietnam, and I, from what I understood and what he didn't really like to talk about it because it was very traumatic and horrific. It was war. I mean, you can't imagine having to go to another world basically,
Yeah,
and you're ordered to kill people in the name of whatever, and it's
right,
none of your business basically. But
right.
he became addicted to heroin in Vietnam, uh, and he said he used because he couldn't cope with the
The reality.
atrocities of war. Reality was too much for him, so
Yeah.
he self medicated, and unfortunately he became addicted. But and he said there was one day he was, and I'm gonna be brief with this little story. He was walking. Him and his partner were walking through the jungles of Vietnam. He turned his head one way and he turned back, and his partner's head was gone. So I'm talking to you like this, and somebody comes and blows my head off. It's going to be a little jarring to somebody that's
Absolutely.
19. Somebody that's 19. So not to say that everybody should use drugs to cope with certain circumstances, but that unfortunately he did, and
Right.
he became addicted, and he was never completely sober for the rest of his life. And
Well, I'll say this, something to that extreme is extremely traumatizing, right?
for
And it's
sure,
not up for us to judge based off what we don't know. We weren't in his shoes. We don't know what that felt like. Just
right,
knowing the circumstances of, you're actually walking with your fellow soldier and you turn for a quick sec and then you come back and they're gone. Like
Right.
mentally, that's taxing, right? And then you still have to try to process everything else. So I want people to understand that,
You
okay,
still have to fight for your life. You
right,
still got to survive somehow.
right, right. And just because he, became addicted to heroin doesn't mean that he was like a bad person, or, sometimes
Right.
people, you never know why people do what they do, but that is a coping mechanism.
For
Do
sure.
you care to explain how your father came in contact with heroin in Vietnam?
So from what I understand, they basically were giving it to the soldiers who wanted to take it, and he was one of the ones that decided that he wanted to take it, and he was able to come through and survive the war and actually come home. He was a shell of himself, but if he wasn't able to numb himself and get through those days, I wasn't even born. He would have never. I wouldn't have been here telling this story if I'm not going to say I'm here because he was on heroin, but
Right, right, right.
he was in his mind. He was able to survive because he was not even in his right mind, or he said he would have succumbed to something. He wouldn't have been able to do it. He wouldn't have been able to function with
Absolutely.
those circumstances over there. It was horrible.
You hear a lot of different people, Air Force, especially Army, that talk about the conditions and, like you say, killing people, and sometimes it includes children. And
Right.
you're doing a lot of people that's in the service do a lot of things that we aren't, working class citizens aren't privy to, right? This is not even
Right.
our thought, a second thought or a first thought, because that's just not our reality. But when you're in that type of environment, you have to do what you have to do, but that still doesn't mitigate the
What's going on?
ramifications
The
of, yeah,
gravity of the situation is crazy.
right, right, right,
It's really crazy. So he I know for a fact that my father loved me,
absolutely,
but the monkey on his back, for lack of a better term, that was heroin. He just couldn't kick it, and he wasn't able to be the father that I needed him to be, or the father that he knew he should have been.
right.
And it wasn't. I honestly, I could say I hated my dad for a little while when he passed away, because in my mind, he took himself away from his children, his loved ones, his mother, his other siblings, based on him choosing drugs. But he didn't necessarily choose to be
Okay.
addicted.
Yeah,
He
yeah,
didn't. Nobody. I don't think anybody wants to be addicted to anything.
absolutely,
But it's something that, once you make that choice and it becomes an addiction, you're a slave to the rhythm,
absolutely.
and you got to go get it,
And you
regardless
are
to whom or what.
100% accurate. 100% accurate. And it wasn't like he was just out here like, oh, let me go try some heroin. It was, he was doing what he felt he needed to deal with the current circumstances.
For
So,
sure.
you can't knock him for that, because again, we didn't occupy those shoes and we don't know what that felt like. But this is something that a lot of people who were in the service have in common. But then when they come back
Right.
here, back to the US, where are the programs? Where is, any resources and help? A lot of them are on the streets, homeless, and and it's sad.
And it wasn't. Now there's an opioid epidemic, right? When
Yep.
my dad came back, he was just a junkie. It wasn't an epidemic. It didn't affect a certain demographic. So he was just looked at as a inward junkie that couldn't deal with reality. And
Mhm.
now, because it hits certain sectors of the population, it's an epidemic, and they have to do something about this because Johnny can't be on pills, and we can't let Susie just be out here selling her body for Xanax. But when my dad was on it, only thing they set up was methadone clinics, and methadone is a synthetic form of heroin that doesn't do
Yeah.
anything but get you high legally. you're allowed to go and get it. You don't have to go buy an illegal substance. They give you synthetic heroin that they came up with to try to wean them off of heroin,
Okay.
but it didn't do anything but it curbs your appetite for the drug because it's the drug,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
it never did what it was set out to do. It just
Right.
stopped them from going to knock somebody's head off to get a bag of heroin.
Right.
So,
Right. Right.
and that, he battled with that for I don't know when he came. I mean, probably like 1970, 60, one of those years he came back. When he came back, he was a full blown heroin addict. He
So
was in and
he
out of. I'm
started
sorry.
in Vietnam. He started in Vietnam.
Yes,
So he was 19 when he joined. So maybe when he was like 20 something in his
somewhere
20s.
around there. So can you imagine? I don't know how old your oldest son is, but my son will be 21 on December 13th. There's no way in the world that little boy would be ready to go to another country and just start popping strangers because somebody told him to.
Right.
It's your
Right.
mind is not set up to take those type of traumas.
Yeah.
And
And then
especially then
actually
you
living
can't get
through it.
help for right. He
Yeah.
barely had, and I'm not trying to be vulgar. He was barely sexually active when
Hmm.
he went to Vietnam. But you want him to be a stone cold killer and then come
Yeah.
back to society and be normal.
Yeah. And
There's
that's
no
not how
normal
it
after that.
is. Yeah.
There's no
Yeah.
normal after you're basically a hired hitman for the government. They paid them to go over there and kill people.
Right. And in the
And
meantime, they realized that there was a lot. I guess maybe they bit off more than they could chew. And once you sign a contract, it's really
right,
nothing you could do. You know what I
they
mean? So
didn't. And then they had the draft too, so they were drafting people. Like you had to go, or you needed to run somewhere and hide, or they were taking you over there one way or the other.
yeah, yeah,
So, and it was horrible. Like I said, my dad was never completely sober once he got hooked on heroin in Vietnam. So he had to deal with that for the rest of his days.
yeah,
And I got my sister and I and my other siblings, we got the remnants of my father. He was never himself again. And
hmm,
it's hurtful and it's sad that the country that you were born in would send you over there to do something like that. And then when you come back, there's no help, there's nothing.
yeah,
You just gotta fend for yourself almost. And
yep, yep, yep.
and that was that. And
That's horrible, and it's sad because, like you said, it's very common, and these are conversations that a lot of people don't really have. You know what I
right,
mean? And outside of that, that's still outside of your father's addiction. It still leaves remnants to you, your siblings,
right,
because you have to deal with that mental
right,
aspect of your father, what your father actually went to go accomplish, how he came back. It's like it's a lot of moving parts. You know what I
right,
mean? You're dealing with various emotions based off of a decision that he felt at the time was a good life decision for
right.
you guys to make a good living and to provide, but it really kind of not kind of, but it really turned around and killed them essentially instead of
Right.
giving him a free life that he expected from that.
Yeah, and I guess he thought he was doing a service for
Yeah,
his country.
yeah.
And I guess he was in a way, if you look at it. But at the same time, they didn't do anything for him,
It
but
was
make
at
him
the
a
expense of
but
himself.
make him a mentally ill person that needed drugs to
To
cope with
cope.
anything adverse. He turned to a bag of heroin. Like I said, I know he loved us, but
Right,
he wasn't equipped to love us the way he should have because of the drug abuse.
right.
And because of that, you know, when you don't have that in your life, you know how it feels not to have it. So you overcompensate when you have children, and
Right.
you do certain things to make them not feel what you felt when you were a child. And
Right.
at least that's the way I know I went about parenting.
Hmm.
And sometimes it's like we talked about, it's um it's almost counterproductive because now your kids are become entitled to certain things and they don't appreciate certain things. And like we said the other day, there's so many other. They're going to be assholes anyway, right? Excuse my language,
They are.
because of what they have access to now.
Yeah.
Social media, video games, whatever the case may be. So
Yeah.
I think it's just like a cycle that we really have to.
That we have to break.
It has to be the sins of the father can't be thrown onto the children just because we think that that's the right thing to do. We have to sit down with these kids and really, we got to break these chains, man, and these generational curses,
But I think
because they'll never stop.
But I think the only way to really address these generational curses, it begins with us, right? So if you know
Right.
there's trauma there from, your father to you, we have
Mhm.
to at some point identify that there is a lag there, right?
Right.
So instead of you had the right mindset to be like, oh, well, I'm going to make sure my kids never feel that. And it
Right.
needed to stop there. But, realistically and naturally, you, like you said, you overcompensate. But
Mhm.
I think that when that awareness is there, the awareness of understanding that, your father loved you, your father had a
Mhm.
problem,
Right.
did you feel, the ramifications of that? Yes. But dealing with how you feel about that will
Mhm.
also make sure that, because materialistic things don't suffice for time,
Right.
right?
Right.
So although we want to make sure our kids don't feel what we felt, it doesn't sum up to us buying them everything, because like you said, they're entitled buttholes now. You
Right.
know what I mean? So we kind of created a different devil in a sense with that.
Right. Mhm.
But I think that once we are aware and conscious of our hurt and pain, we can start to actively work on that. So we do
Right.
not overcompensate, but we're just actually active parents.
Right.
You know what
And it always sounds, for me, it sounds like super cliche to say there's no manual or no handbook for
I
parenting,
mean?
right? But there
Yeah.
really isn't. And everybody is like kind of flying by the seat of their pants, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, this happened, I'm gonna do this and see if that works. And if that don't work, let me go to the next thing. Well, what
Yeah.
happens when everything don't work? Do
Right.
you are you failing your child, or are you just doing the things that you think that you need to
Yeah.
do? Like when you exhaust every avenue to reach your kids and have them be a productive member of society, a good person with morals and respect, and they don't always display those things,
Right.
I get frustrated and I want to fight my my children. Not fight physically, but
I know.
I'm
I
mad.
know.
I'm I'm mad about it. Like, yo, why? How you? What is wrong with you, dog? Like
Yeah. The audacity. These
you
kids, they're
right?
they're
You don't
different.
come from that. You don't come from people disrespecting older people or just not giving a damn about anything but yourself. Like, I was
Yeah.
never that guy.
No, it's definitely a different generation in a different world, and I actually want to have you back on for us to have that discussion about
Okay.
these new
I be I,
generation kids.
I kind of ramble sometimes. I apologize. I got a
It's all
little off
good.
topic.
It's all good. It's all good. But I do definitely want to have you back for that conversation, because I think that is
Okay.
another conversation that a lot of parents need to hear, because parents don't understand that we may all have different issues, but it's all kind of collectively the same.
Right.
It
Right.
all boils down to your children being entitled, lazy,
Hmm.
disrespectful, no matter what upbringing they had. So that is
Right.
definitely something that's golden that we will discuss.
Cool.
But I know we spoke about your father. So do you care? Do you mind, giving a little bit of backstory about your brother?
No, not at all. I get so I get emotional about my brother.
Take your time.
So my brother, he had a lot. He battled a lot of things. He was molested as a child by his mother's husband. So much so to the fact that he told me that in his mind, he had to make himself like it so it wouldn't hurt. So he couldn't deal with the pain of the man touching him. So he trained himself to like it. And in turn, my brother was openly bisexual. He had children. He, but he he was
Mm.
openly bisexual, and he had hip surgery at one point in his life, and he started um, using pain pills, and the pain pills weren't enough at some point, so he turned to the harder drugs to get the effect of the pain pill, and he didn't make it either. So all of those things created that person. Those childhood traumas that we talked about
Yes.
created the person that doesn't know how to deal with pain.
Right.
So he masked it. He masked it with something, and he masked it to the point where he died. I got a phone call on. I was at, what is it called? I was at Old Country Buffet
Mm-hmm.
having breakfast with my youngest son, and my cousin called me and said, "Yo, you got to get to my mom's house. They working on your brother." I'm like, "What? What are you talking about?" He said, "Just go." So, and it was super cold outside that night, and it was rainy that morning. And when I got there, my brother was laying on his back in the driveway. I didn't know that he had passed. So I've run up there, and the cop stops me. He was like, I'm like, "Yo, help my brother. What are you doing? Get my brother. Oh, it's cold outside. Get my brother." So, and he was like, "Yo, just walk down, calm down." And I walked back up. I said, "Yo, man, you got to get my brother off this ground. What's going on?" I said, "What's going on, my brother?" He's like, "Sir, we're waiting for the coroner." I said, "The coroner? Why? What?" And I'm like, "What?
Yeah.
What does the coroner have to do with?" Like, I didn't process it.
Yeah. 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 You weren't
I
able to
didn't
connect the
process it.
dots. Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, "Yo, is my brother dead?" And he said, "Yeah, man, sorry."
Mm.
And I had to make so I didn't it didn't register, but I had to call my mother. I had to call my cousins. Like, "Yo, you got to come over here." They said Sharon is gone, and I had to leave because I couldn't stay there. And
Yeah.
my mom called me. She was like, "Come back. The coroner's here. You got to come back." I'm like, "Okay." So when I get back, they were um they were zipping my brother up in a
Mm.
body bag.
Mm-hmm.
And I tried to I, I, I nobody should ever see that.
Yeah.
Nobody should ever see a loved one in that condition.
Yeah.
You know, is I still don't. I'm getting choked up now. I'm trying to get through it, but
Yeah.
I tried to, and I took my brother in on certain occasions because he wasn't doing his best. He wasn't able to hold down a job because of his addictions. He wasn't able, and I can't. I'm not going to see my brother in the cold if I have somewhere for him to be, right?
Right. Right.
So I tried to help my brother the best I could, but I've never been addicted to anything. So I don't know what it feels like to be addicted or have that addiction on me so hard that I have to go and get something.
Right.
So
Right.
I would just tell my brother, "Yo, bruh, you got to stop, man. You got to stop or you got to get out. You can't be high here." Right. And that was my hard line. That was my line in the sand, bruh. You can't be high at my house in front of your nephew. I'm
Yeah.
not doing it. I'm not allowing you. And we always just talk. I said, I'm not going. I can't do daddy twice in my lifetime, bro. I can't. He acted like my dad. He talked like my dad. He sat like my dad. And it was like a clone.
Yeah.
And all the most vivid memories of my dad I have, unfortunately, are him being high on heroin. And that shit took me right back to those traumas, being with
Yeah.
my brother.
Yeah.
And I wish I could have I wish I could have did a better job dealing with my brother's addiction because I think I don't know.
Can I
God's will is
intervene?
God's will.
Can I intervene on that? One thing I don't want you to do is go back or woulda, coulda, shoulda. Because I'm gonna tell you something. With addiction, again, like you said, you don't know what it's like to have an addiction.
Right,
Don't take on that mental aspect of it, because I'm gonna tell you something. You can only help people who want to be helped. If
right,
he wasn't wanting to help, no matter what you did, no matter the tolerance that you allowed, no matter the patience that you had, no matter if you put him in a mansion on a hill, if he
right,
didn't want the help, there was nothing that Naj could do. He
right.
would have to want that first. And I'm sure if he wanted it,
If he
then
wanted it bad
he
enough,
would have,
it would have
right.
been able. He would have been able to deal with it. But some people's, they say when people hit rock bottom, they stop and look at things in a different light, so they
Mhm.
can change them. Some people's, and I had to you learn this. Some people's rock bottom is the cemetery,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
there's no. That's it.
Yeah.
Now you want a teacher or having this type of conversation with somebody about them. So
Yeah.
it's hurtful, man.
Absolutely. It's it's
It's
it's and it's
hurtful.
something that you're never it's never going to stop hurting you. Because just seeing you get emotional, like this is something that you're going to live with for the rest of your life. You know what I
Time
mean?
doesn't heal. Time
No.
doesn't heal anything. They lied.
I think if things get better in time, like you start learning how to actively deal with it and still live. But I don't think that depend. Thankfully, I haven't had a whole bunch of people or super close people to me to pass away. Thank God. So
Right,
I couldn't imagine with certain, like my sister, my brother. I couldn't imagine that pain, and I sympathize with you because I don't think that's something that I would ever get over either. And then
right,
the mannerism of which he passed, you have these vivid memories of seeing him on the ground. There's a lot that you've
right.
taken on as a result of his passing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. And I just hope that nobody else, like there's a couple of friends of mine that have lost siblings, and this is not a club that I want somebody to be a part of. I don't want to be, I don't want to be the captain of the lost siblings tribe.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just not. It's horrible. And I lost my father. I've lost cousins, aunts, uncles, things like that. But I have never felt a pain like the pain that I have to go through with losing my big brother. It's hard. It's the most horrible loss that I've ever taken
Yeah.
by
I can
far.
imagine. I can imagine. And you know what, too? I think that, the fact of you, obviously, you and your brother have different moms. You guys share the same father.
Right.
So the things that he was exposed to as a child is one of the worst things that can ever happen to a child, because essentially you as an adult, or even if you're a teenager, right, you're essentially stealing that child's innocence, right, and
Hmm.
you're creating a deficiency that they're going to try to fill down the line with something. And as a young boy, being molested isn't as I know a few guys who've been molested by women, right? But I just the idea of a young man who isn't aware of what sexuality is and what he likes and what he doesn't like, and then an adult preying on his innocence and touching on him and stealing his innocence. I think that is a whole different demon in someone's head, because it's like, well, I thought I liked girls, but this guy is touching me. Is this right? Or is this wrong? And now he's developing all these psychological emotions that he shouldn't even have as a child.
Right.
So growing up in that, and then, I don't know, I could go, because I'm big on, I can't stand child molesters in any capacity. I think they're like the scum of the earth, right? But then you have to, did the mom know? You know what I'm saying? Sometimes women be okay with, so as long as they have a man, they'll allow, like, I would
Right.
kill somebody.
I don't.
I promise you, I would kill them, and then I would call the cops and tell them I did it, because I think
Right.
that's the worst thing you could do to a
Yeah. I'm
child.
not. I don't even like to think about somebody touching one of my grandkids or
Right.
you
I'm
know,
going to
because it's
jail. I'm going to jail. I promise you.
yeah.
It's
I'm not calling the cops to have you arrested.
no. I'm
I'm
going to deal
I'm
with you
calling the
myself.
cops. I'm calling the cops to come get me or to come scoop you up out the
Yep.
backyard because you're
Yep.
done. It's
And I'm gonna sit
you
right
know
there and wait for him.
certain things you're just not supposed to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And at the end of the day, when you do that to children, obviously you know it's wrong, right? Because you're essentially, you're not being out in the open with it. You're doing it at nighttime. You're doing it when mom's not around. You're threatening them. You're making them think that this is okay, but it's your secret. So obviously there's thought that's put into it. So anytime you do that to a child, you you really are the scum of the earth. I don't think there's any worse people that
I
populate
don't
the
think
earth.
for me, I don't think that is forgivable. I don't think if there's a God in heaven that exists the way that religion tells us, God shouldn't forgive you for that. That
Well,
should be an unforgivable sin.
I agree. But I will say there is a God in the sky because I encountered him several times.
Hmm.
But I think that, and this could be another topic too. I think that there is a misconception on what God allows and doesn't allow, right?
And
Um,
we talked about that. I have an issue with a lot of those things, like free will and things of
yeah.
that
And,
nature.
we're gonna come back to that. I think we're gonna have like 3 or 4 more episodes with you. Like, because we
Okay.
have really good conversation and we have, I like to I like to discuss these types of things because these
Right.
are things that were occurring back in the days growing up, and everything was hush hush. It's no, what
Right.
goes on in my house stays in my house. Don't
Right.
talk about nothing. So now that these conversations are beginning to be had, I want you to come back on so we can have these discussions. But I want to try not to get, because I'm starting to ramble because I despise child molesters. So I'm going off on a tangent, but let me try to ring it in a little bit. But in terms of your brother, his
Hmm.
innocence was stole from him. So he never got to become his most authentic self. And I'm
Right.
sure that at that time, mental health was not a thing.
No.
Counseling was not a thing. So he had to deal, and then on top of that, black and brown men, you can't feel, because if you do, you're emasculated, right? That
Right.
means that you now have to suppress your emotions and the things that are happening to you. Who do you talk to? Where do you go? All of this is inside and it's festering. So the way
Listen,
he dealt with it was the way he dealt with it. Nobody can judge that.
I wear mine on my sleeve. If it's bothering me, I'm gonna let you know. If I need to shed a drop a few tears, it is what it is.
So be it.
I'm not ashamed or embarrassed about it. I do get a little. I think sometimes I react emotionally as well
Mm-hmm. We all
because
do.
I think that's because I was raised by women, and women are more emotional than men. I didn't have a man
Yeah.
to show me the other side, but it's
Yeah.
okay. I'm
But you're balanced. You're
right,
balanced. Because I mean, people that's watching don't know you're a little crazy. So I mean, you
right.
got. Nah, I'm just kidding.
Hey,
You,
I might curse somebody out and hug them the next second. But listen,
but you're still all men, and it's
I have layers.
and
Like
yeah, but that's healthy. That's a healthy thing to have. That's not a problem. And I want people to start this, which is why this whole mental health thing is near and dear to me, because I want people to understand that you are human and you are supposed to process your feelings. So when you cry, whether you're a man or a woman, like, you're basically releasing toxins. And now once you cry, think about it, when you cry and you get it all out, now you're able to think with a level mind. You're more level headed instead of reacting out of anger and reacting out of emotion. You
for
cry
sure.
it out, and now you can be like, all right, this is what happened. Now, what do I need to do to fix it? Right.
That's
So you're more,
I think those the cries or the pain trying to exit your body
absolutely. It's a
and
kite.
exit your mind because that can't be in there. I mean, you
No.
don't ever forget certain things, but you can't constantly be battling with that
And
because
and when people do constantly battle with it, what they do is they use
right.
paraphernalia, they substance
Hmm.
abuse, alcohol, and then that's where the addictions come into play because they're
Right.
trying so hard to escape the reality. You can't escape your mind. That's with you 24/7. And if
The
you don't have
battlefield of the mind.
yes, if you don't have a good support system, if you don't believe in counseling, if you don't believe in, speaking about how you feel because you think that's going to emasculate you, you are left to deal with all of these spirits
Right.
within, and you just want it to stop. So what happens? People turn to what they think is going to get them away from the reality, i.e. drugs.
Right.
And in your brother's case, his was because he had hip surgery. It wasn't like he
So
just went out there to go and get away from his reality. It was more so because he had an injury and his body became acclimated to the medicine that he was putting in his body.
that substance becomes your counselor.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does, because it clears everything
It
away.
becomes your
Everything's gone.
counselor. You're numb to the world, and
Yep.
you ain't
Yep.
got to deal with certain shit. But
Yep.
I encourage anybody that is able or can afford it or has insurance, and you got some things that you got on your mind, go talk to somebody that knows how to deal with those type of things, because you cannot fight it alone. It's impossible. You
Yeah, it
can't.
is
As
impossible.
much as you think you're a strong person and you an independent woman or you a strong man, listen, you can't fake for yourself. You can't fake yourself out. You could
Yeah,
talk a good game, but in your head, you really have to go in and seek some help so you can be whole. Is this
absolutely. And be in a proper state of mind.
right?
I will say, for the people who don't have insurance, you can go to your local community center. You can, there's clinics, that offer, mental health resources, which is therapy. If you have a substance abuse addiction, they can, help you, redirect you.
Mhm.
Even your department of health in your city, your state, or wherever you are, you can always go to the department of health as well to inquire about services if you do not have insurance. So
Right,
there's really no excuse to not go and seek the help outside of being in your own mind, thinking that it's
right.
going to make you weak. When people don't realize that getting help is actually a strength, it's not a weakness. It's because you are now acknowledging that something's up and something's wrong, and you need to correct that.
And you want
And
to
that
fix
is
it. You want to be better.
absolutely, yeah, yeah, yeah. So, um,
Acknowledgement is the first step, I guess. And you have to accept the fact that you can't do it alone.
yeah. And be
Doesn't make
okay with that. You're not doing, and be okay with that. It's okay. We're human beings. Like you said, there's no handbook to parenting, but there's no handbook to trying to fix ourselves, right? Because who wants to live their life through the traumas that they've experienced? I was one of them. And that brought my life to a crisis level, right?
right.
So I understand the importance. I understand how imperative it is to have these conversations, to create safe spaces for people, for people to see like there is help, there is hope if you do want the help.
For
If
sure.
you right. So like we must begin by you sharing your story about your father and your brother. These are people, like the people who watch, these are family members, these are
Right.
neighbors, these are co-workers. You know
For
what I mean?
sure.
So people can start to begin to see that we are more alike than we are not alike, right?
I think every family from every walk of life has somebody or something that they might not be so proud to tell you about. You know what I mean?
Naj, check your volume. I can't hear you.
It's all the way up. Can you hear me now?
I hear you, but it's really faint.
I don't know what's wrong with this thing. Can you hear me now?
Mm.
It's all the way up.
Mine is too. Let's see. I'll turn it up more.
Maybe it's time to
Talk.
go,
There you
Negro.
go. Yeah. I knew you was going to come out. You was going to come out
Listen,
at some point in this interview,
will the real Najm Branch please stand up?
and he just
But
did.
right, I have bouts. I have flashes of uh civilization and intelligence. But once in a while, the other guy comes and says hi too. What you want me to do? What you want me
Go
to do? Tell
away,
you a lie?
Naj. Go
You want
away.
me,
Nah,
you
tell
want me
him
to
to
tell
leave.
you a lie? He's cool now.
Nah, okay. No, but I do thank you for sharing your story. I do think that this is something that is going to help heal people
Right.
and essentially heal the world. It's going to help our youth who are now dealing with so many different things, addiction. They got, you said earlier, social media. They're privy to so much, and they have to understand and know that there is help, and mental health does matter. And you're not going to be
For sure.
discounted if you're dealing with an addiction. The most likeliest people, you just never know what people are going through,
Right.
so I just want people to understand that, it's okay to not be okay, and it's okay to seek help. That does not make you
There, there's
weak.
definitely an outlet for everything. For anything that you think you're going through, there's an outlet and somebody that can help you get through. If you
Absolutely.
can't do it alone, and I honest to God don't think people can deal with those type of things by themselves. Or if they could, then nobody would be going through anything.
Right.
They would
Right.
just fix it, and we would be
Ex-
cool. Everybody would be walking around eating cupcakes and jumping over rainbows on unicorns and shit. But sometimes the DJ stops playing your favorite song, right? And you got to
Absolutely.
deal with the remnants of the party. The party's over, and now you got to really, oh shit, I'm by myself now. What's going on?
Yeah.
Ain't no more
And
cupcakes left. The party's over.
right. And it's a very true statement. And people have to understand that it's going to be work. It's going to be hard. It's not
Right,
easy. It's not
right.
self-healing and healing. And whether you self-healing or you are being, going to get healed, i.e. counselors, therapy, psychiatrists, whatever, it's going to take work and it's going to take consistency. You're not going to wake
Right.
up one day and just be healed from your trauma. You have to be in alignment with your higher power, whoever that may be, to kind of, not kind of, but to keep you in line and in alignment with what you're doing. So you need a faith, you need something to anchor you,
I
right?
think
And
some
once,
people don't even recognize that they have trauma. Okay, they really don't. They just think that, oh, this is how I am.
oh,
No,
that was me. That was me.
that's not
I know
you.
that feeling.
That's not that. It's not us. That's not
Yo,
the authentic us that we are put here to be.
yo,
That
let me
that
tell you
trauma
something.
ain't. Oh, that's just how I am. Nah, nah. You don't. You're not supposed to be mean and nasty or withdrawn and don't want to go talk to people or don't want to interact with certain things because it triggers you.
Yep.
That's not how. That's that trauma.
Yo, let me tell you something. And my friends, my family, they'll vouch, right? If you was to say something, you'd be like, you didn't like, I'd be like, okay, well, that's just who I am and how I am. And if you don't like it,
Right.
then keep it moving. Like so. And you know, again, you like you said, people don't realize it. I did not realize it, right? It takes certain life experiences to get you to self-reflect. A lot of times people
Right.
don't spend time self-reflecting,
Because
right?
that trauma has been with you for so long that
Especially
it
when it happens
almost
as a
does.
child.
It almost does become a part of you, right?
Right.
But
Until you
it's
recognize it.
it's not the healthiest version of yourself that you need to be. So you
And
got to
it's
get
not
rid of that.
and it's not conducive to growth. You can't
Nah.
grow if you are content with being or having that attitude of this is just how I am. Like that's not acceptable because we're not born to stay the same. You're supposed to grow and elevate. You're supposed to, get kind of rid old habits and kind of, just be your most authentic self. And I've said this before in different interviews. I feel amazing. I feel
Right.
amazing now because there's so many layers that has now been taken off of me. I was living through a lot of things that I didn't realize. And it wasn't
Right.
until my 30s that I realized it. But thankfully, and I went through a whole 3-year journey. God took me and ran me through the ringer. You understand me? Like it was
Mhm.
some very dark days, right?
So watch how dope these next 30 gonna be
I
because you
know.
got rid of that shit.
I know. And it feels good. Every day
Right.
I'm good. Like I'm literally good. People be like, oh, if you need somebody to talk to. And I'm like, no, don't get me wrong. I appreciate it, but I'm good. Like now I want to help bring other
Mhm.
people out of their darkness and get
Right.
people to realize their full potential so they
You can't
too can live. What you
you
say?
can't live as that person, that broken person, because that was then, right?
Yep.
How do you move forward living in that moment? That moment was, somebody told me one time that the two biggest things in the world that you cannot worry yourself with are yesterday and tomorrow.
Yep. Yep.
Yesterday is gone, tomorrow doesn't exist. Today is right now, and we're going to live in it and make it the best we can. Make it better than tomorrow. Make today better than yesterday, and tomorrow should take care of itself.
And it does. And it does.
And if you're okay with not being that person that you were yesterday, you're going to be. For me, I think I'm a better person now that, like, this was therapeutic. This conversation, right? And it's not the first time that I opened up and talked about it, but
Mm-hmm.
everybody has a different viewpoint and a different light to shed on those things that
Yeah.
you go through. So
Yeah.
you take little pieces of everything that somebody says, and it makes you feel better.
It does. And
It helps you.
it makes you feel better, and it also gives hope to the next person who's dealing with it. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? So this is what it's all about. It's all about healing and helping one another instead of tearing each other down and making fun of each other. Like, no, this is about real healing and really helping each other become your most authentic self. Because I'm telling you, this is the best thing.
Right.
What was so traumatic for me turned out to be the best thing that happened to me. Me
Right.
hit rock bottom and becoming suicidal to the point where God had to speak to me directly and give me direction. And from that
Or you
moment
would have
forward,
never came up out of that shit.
I wouldn't be here. I was
Mm.
because I was about to commit suicide. Like, that's a real thing. I'm not playing when I say that. I was out of here. I had enough, right? But God spoke to me, and He separated me for 3 years for a lot of different things, and He literally stripped me down from to my childhood because there was so much that I was living through that I was not aware of, and I wasn't the nicest person, and I wasn't the best person, and
Right.
I didn't think my shit didn't stink. You honestly, and God had to show me that it did. So again,
But you
another
dressed it up nice when you had to go out, and you smiled real pretty for the people, and you was a shell of yourself. And just
and
like
that was
everybody else that has to go through something, they put their best face on and they arch their shoulders back, and I'm gonna go rock the world. But
yep.
inside, you still that little boy that didn't have a dad in his life, and he couldn't deal with the fact that his mom wasn't completely there for him the way he needed her to be. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and you
So
know what? As a man or a woman, whomever, until like especially if you have childhood trauma, until you heal that little boy or little girl, you'll never become the man or the woman that you
right,
supposed to be, what you need to be. You
you
have to
always
heal. You have to heal. And within our communities, healing wasn't an option. It
mm-mm.
was being resilient. It was being tough and moving on and just dealing. That's not how life should be. That's not.
Unfortunately, that's not realistic. To
It's not. It's very
Now we
unrealistic.
know better. Now we know better, so we got to do better, right? We
That's
didn't
why
know.
Pride matters, and I'm
Right.
having different people coming on telling their
Listen,
story.
I'm ready to tell it all. I
Okay,
ain't doing no snitching, but I'm gonna tell it all.
listen. Well, when we get off this, we're going to schedule you for another one because again, I think that you
Okay.
have a lot to give to viewers. I think there's a lot of people that can benefit from seeing. They may be able to identify with you. Like, yo,
Right.
he's a man, and he's he's spitting some real shit, and he dealt with whatever the case may be, right? I think that it's beneficial to have these conversations so people can also understand that they're not alone in this fight.
Right. For sure.
Everybody's fighting something. But if you
Right.
understand how to fight, if we can help equip you with the tools, if we can give you the resources and the direction, then it's going to lighten your load a little bit more. But again, it's going to be
Right.
work. So I want to thank you for your time. Before we go, is there any advice you would like to give or any last or parting words?
I would just tell anybody out there that's watching, um, if there's something, just talk to somebody. Go talk to God. If that's who you confide in, talk to God. Get it out. And don't be afraid to be vulnerable. You know,
Right.
you because it's that tough shell. At some point, something's gonna crack it, and
Yes, it will.
you're not gonna be okay. Pressure bust pipes, and if you don't, if and stress kills you. So I would say to anybody out there that was on the fence about kind of coming out and talking to somebody, you don't have to be public. You don't have to be on a forum like this. Just go kick it with somebody and let them know what's going on with you so you can kind of deal with it a little better. Somebody to listen to that's going to be authentic and not judge you,
Yeah.
a real friend.
Yeah.
But everybody needs somebody, man. Everybody. I don't care who it is. And
Absolutely.
nobody is too strong or too macho or too woman to everybody has a problem. Everybody goes through some shit.
Yes, we do.
Everybody done went through something that they didn't think that they would be able to deal with, right? But we still here.
We're still here, and we're still standing strong, and we actually come out stronger than we did before we went in. So
So listen, if anybody is watching this and they want to rap with me, go on social media and come and holler at me. I'll be more than happy to talk to somebody. I ain't no doctor, but I done went through some shit, and I can maybe shed some light on something that you might need to talk about, or vice versa. You might give me a jewel that I needed that day to get through my day. So
and I
you
will
know,
put your information in the chat box so people can reach out to you if they see fit. But what I do want to piggyback before we go, you said that that you're not a counselor. Neither am I, but I'm gonna tell you something. Experience is the best teacher. Now, I'm
mhm,
not knocking therapists and counselors because what they do, they have different techniques to help people unveil the things that we can't see, right?
right.
But when
It's kind
you
of from
have
like a clinical side of things, right?
right, and they give you different techniques on how to do things, breathing techniques and things of that nature. However, when people are going through it, like they sometimes need the raunchy shit. They need to hear the
Right,
realness of it. And they also need somebody who went through it themselves
right,
because we can empathize with you and understand you in a different capacity than someone who went to school for 4 years. Right. And
right,
again, I'm not discrediting them because they are very, very effective. But I don't want you and people alike to disregard yourselves and what you could provide to somebody simply
right.
because you don't
'Cause
have a degree.
I done been through some things. Just like they say most the best counselors and drug counselors and they are ex addicts and things like that. Like they got off of drugs and they can sympathize and empathize with you because they've been there. Like I've been through some things, so I might have some insight that you don't have. But I ain't got PhD after my name. But
No one cares. No one
I,
cares.
if I can help, I'm willing to help anybody that wants to talk. I
Right.
really, and I sincerely mean that.
Right. And we appreciate that, definitely. And I appreciate your time. I appreciate your expertise. This was absolutely amazing.
Um,
And like I said,
I
I will
thank you
most,
for having me.
of course, and we're
I
definitely going to
appreciate it.
yeah, we're definitely going to have you back. Very,
Okay.
very in the very near future. But like I said, I will put your information in the chat, so people can get in touch with you. I want to thank everybody for watching and tuning in. And if there's any topic that you would like to be discussed, I invite you to type it in the chat. If you want me and Naj to come back on and have a conversation about something that you yourself are dealing with and you want to remain anonymous, we can do that also. We're
Right.
here to help build each other up. We're here to help elevate and help people become their most authentic selves. That's what this is all about. So I thank you all for tuning in, and I look forward to seeing you all again on the next Mind Matters. Bye,
Thanks,
everybody.
Ken. Peace.
Thanks, Naj. All right, so don't hang up and record.